Hi, welcome to the Culture Roundtable, brought to you by Culture and Sports. At the Culture Roundtable and at Culture and Sports, we talk about how the impact and the importance of leadership and organizational culture have on organizational success, team and athlete performance, and the short and long-term mental, physical, and emotional health of athletes. I'm Jeremy Piasecki. I'm the Executive Director of Culture and Sports, and I'm also a panelist on today's webinar. I'd like to turn it over to our moderator now, Kyle Stark.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I'm fired up to spend the next hour with everybody, but specifically with this group of people. I don't feel like it really matters what the topic would be. This would be a fun conversation, but I am excited to dive in to this specifically. So before we unpack kind of topic, just want to introduce everybody and very talented group of people. When I say long time, it doesn't mean old, it means very accomplished. But just a very talented group of people, but also just some awesome human beings as well. And that's what I want to kind of highlight here. So working around the group, first one, Sandy, Hatfield Clubb. Sandy, longtime college athletics administrator, Arizona State, AD at Drake. Sandy and I have had a chance to partner up on a few different things, but very talented. Sandy, if you'd share a nugget or two just about you as a person.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's really great to be here. I had a privilege of growing up with a big brother just a little bit older than me, and a dad that thought we could do anything, and I never knew I wasn't a boy, and that everybody else, that I was different than anybody else. So I really had the privilege of growing up in a great environment where my opportunities were endless. So it's just when I met Kyle many years ago as an AD at Drake University, it opened up a whole new level of understanding how to take risk, how to get out there and do things right. So anyway, it's been fun to be a gal playing in a guy's world my whole career, and a privilege to be here with these guys today. So just thank you, Kyle, for the opportunity, and Jeremy, and always really cool to be here with Hector and John. So
awesome. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Sandy. John Blanchard, again, a longtime college athletics administrator, a number of different schools. One of the original pioneers in building out a leadership academy in the college athletics setting. John and I got connected when he was at North Carolina Chapel Hill, where he had built that, and then currently doing his own consulting across different organizations, including professional baseball. So, John, share a nugget or two about yourself.
Yeah, it's great to see Sandy. We've crossed paths through Kyle, and of course I work with Hector all the time, so this is great. Yeah, I think I want to share. I've been married for 45 years, 3 married children, one next door with 2 of my 5 grandchildren, one about 10 miles away, and then the other one is a wanderer. He's in Australia, about as far away from Durham, North Carolina as you can get. But yeah, I love what I do. Kyle got me into this originally, and I absolutely love it, and almost as much as I love being a grandfather. So
that's awesome. Thanks, John. I should have mentioned too, it's kind of cool. All of us on this panel are in second careers. Sandy, longtime college athletics and now doing consulting. John, similar college athletics, now doing consulting. Dr. Hector Morales, Hector, long-time retired vet from the United States Army, teacher, coach, accomplished coach, PhD in sports psychology, very versed in the performance world, and passionate about culture, both culture of organization and also culture of cultures, country. And Hector is now a key leader in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization.
Thank you, Kyle. It is an honor to be here with all of you today. I'm honored by the invitation and to be part of this panel. Looking forward to learn, as always, from everyone's experience. As John, I also been married to my bride Marisol for 35 years, and we had a great 26 years military career. Retired, started as a non-English speaking private in the Army and retired as a colonel and academy professor at West Point. So it was a heck of a journey. We had 3 adult children, and Megan, my oldest, is an English teacher in Japan. She's been teaching in Japan for 3 years now, And then my youngest son, Francisco, is a second-year college student in Japan, in Tokyo. He's at a university in Tokyo. So finished his education. So they both love. Maybe my judo experience and background influenced them in the Japanese culture. So it's interesting. And Hector Jr. is working as a student in sports psychology as well, master's students in sports psychology. So it's going to follow my footsteps and spend time with me. So again, glad to be here and looking forward to learning from you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So as we dive into this, the idea here is navigating tension, and we can talk about it in culture, leadership, performance, any of these spaces. But one of the things that I've seen as I spend time with different leaders and coaches is this idea of, and I think it's part of where we're at in society, where we latch on to here's the answer, this is the answer, we want a quick answer. And a lot of times that idea that this is the answer comes in conflict with another idea that is the answer pretty quickly. And the longer you do this, the more you understand to really grasp some of these ideas. It's really navigating the tension between two ideas. And so I'm going to throw out a couple examples, and then I'm going to have one of our panelists just kick it off, and wherever we go, we go. But you'll hear coaches say that it's all about relationships. It's all about navigating people. And then you'll have coaches who say it's all about the process and it's all about driving towards results. So it's like, well, how do those two ideas navigate and come together? You'll see coaches over time have a great group of athletes and great group of people and be frustrated because there's not enough competitiveness in the group. And so they then shift their selection methods towards, we need to get some fierce competitors and get some really competitive individuals and swing the pendulum the other way. And then all of a sudden you look up and nobody likes each other and nobody gets along, and we don't have trust there. Another example, and John Blanchard's actually shared this one with me. You could look at, one of the 20,000 books on leadership, and you could write a book that says it's not about you at all. It's all about service. It's all about pouring into others, and it's about your people. You could also grab a book that says it's all about you, that you got to take care of yourself in order to take care of others, that ultimately the buck stops with you, and that accountability rests on your shoulders. So we throw out these buzzwords, and I think they're simplistic ideas that as you navigate through and you start to see how these different ideas might navigate together and the tension between them, we can get on the other side of complexity and simplify some concepts. So that's the goal today, is to walk through a few of those and not rest on simple platitudes, but talk about, okay, real world, rubber hits the road. How do you navigate some of these things? So let's have John Blanchard. Do you want to kick us off with one that's either front of mind or near and dear to your heart?
Sure, Kyle, I will. And before I do, I'm going to hit you with a simple platitude that is the answer to a lot of what we talk about. And it's Friedman's quote about purpose inspires, values guide, and habits define. And I just think if there's clarity there and a commitment to those, then organizations are going to, individuals and organizations are going to thrive. So on the individual side, it's habits, right? And then on the culture side of an organization, it would be your processes. Culture is how do we do things, right? So what we're dealing with these tensions, navigating them. And there I will refrain from any simple solutions because they're not there. But
so John,
yeah,
repeat that one more time. Purpose, values. Do that one more time for us.
Purpose inspires.
Yes.
Values guide.
Yeah.
And habits/processes define.
Awesome. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And John, that's not a simple platitude. That's a tension between three ideas. You just elevated us.
That's right.
Well, it's awesome. I had to get it down in my notes. I love it.
Yeah. Well, it's not a Blanchard quote, but Friedman, I think, did that. But it's how I begin my work with organizations and in my one-on-one coaching. Like, you have to have clarity on those. So, Kyle, the tension I wanted to kick off with was this tension of having accountability and execution up front. Like, every group talks about, we got to get results, we got to win. It's all about accountability. How good are we at executing the task, right? And of course, right? But then the tension, when you talk about leadership, is how are you growing and developing your people? Because we learn, and Hector, Kyle, and I have such a strong background in baseball, and failure teaches the game, right? We learn through mistakes, and that's how we get better. So how does the leader navigate getting those results, right? Getting outcomes, and pouring into people and taking time, because that's going to derail immediate outcomes. And the tension is, can I give up immediate outcomes for a more long-term view, right? And I find the best leaders have that long-term view. They see the process unveiling, they trust their processes, and they move forward. Again, no solutions, but in all of these tensions, I will tell you my bias is not to use the word balance. Never happens. We can't go 50-50. Anybody who's married knows it's not 50-50 ever, right? 70-30, 30-70, 80-20, etc. Right? It's what harmony can we bring, right? And Kyle knows my personality profile, how I seek harmony. What harmony can we bring in those tensions, right? There are times when execution and accountability have to jump to the top. And there are times when you can hold back and develop people, right? I think the key around that, and Hector, I think when you and I have talked in the past, I know you're big on this word too, is clarity. What are the expectations, right? I have been amazed. I've worked for organizations and I've asked in my coaching, so who's your supervisor? They didn't know. They actually said, I don't know. It could be this person, sometimes this person. I'm not sure. Well, what are your main priorities? What are you tasked with? I just don't know, right? So that's obviously a culture that needs a lot of work, right? Set clear expectations. When you're in the growth and development phase, really coach through the failure. Don't step in and fix, which is really a temptation. I know I did that before. I got called out on it, and it really undermines growth and development. And then just being really wise about, first of all, who you give stretch assignments to. Who are you investing to? Because you're not investing in everyone, because not everyone is that talent, right? So who are you investing in? And then when do you give them that stretch, right? So you don't start at the most heated, critical assignment, right? You build up, and then it's part of the culture, and it's part of like, hey, this is what we do, right? And it becomes that. So, Kyle, I think I'll just hold there, see comments, other people chime in on this topic.
Yeah,
John. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was just gonna say I love it, and actually we can stop the panel now because John's solved everything.
Yeah.
But I just to highlight a couple things, and then Jeremy jump in and then everybody weigh in on just your experiences on how you've navigated this. Two quick things to highlight: the balance piece. John, I'm glad you brought that up early. Again, it's more this idea of navigating the tension as opposed to trying to get them equal. There's going to be ebbs and flows, and I love, even as you've highlighted. And I encourage everybody to reflect on that. Each of us are going to have some tendencies to naturally go to one side of this. And if we're aware of that, then we can navigate that a little better. There's a couple of us on this call, actually probably three of us I know on this call, that probably naturally navigate more towards the accountability, execution, get it done right. And the ability to flex both sides of those. So thanks, John. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so one of the things we talk about a lot here at Culture and Sports is organizational success, right? And how does that come? And that comes by identifying what success means. And so success changes over time, right? So if you come into a team or organization that's constantly losing, the idea of what success looks like is probably a lot different than a team that just won a sport at the Olympics, or the Super Bowl, or March Madness, or whatever the case may be. That identification of success and what success means looks differently. And, John, you talked about how, organizations, need to stretch and change, based off of what, in this case, what success looks like. And I think we just need to be very clear about success is ever changing. It changes not only decade to decade, but year to year, even quarterly or monthly. What success looks like is constantly changing. And as long as athletic directors or GMs or leaders of sports organizations are constantly identifying what is changing um, with success and what that idea looks like, then the coaches can change and continue to look at what success means to them, and they can identify and move that to the support staff and to the athletes themselves.
Hector, Sandy?
Yeah, I think I'll add to the element of clarity that John brought in, that you can't have no expectations without clarity. There's no expectations without clarity. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen people face is when they decide to let go of someone, whether it's in baseball or any other role, and they say, well, this person is no longer a fit. And then the question that they might be faced with is, a fit to what? You never gave me an expectation of what I'm supposed to do to be part of this culture. There was no progression of development. So as leaders, our role is to, number one, provide the resources and set the conditions for people to be successful. And understanding that growth is part of it is something that becomes part of our responsibility. We brought somebody in because we saw some potential. And if we're not giving them the feedback they need, so they know how they're contributing to the culture, then we just created multiple different variations of this culture. So it's important for us to recognize that without clarity, there can be no expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
And
if I could tie real quick what Hector just said and then what Jeremy just said, like I was at North Carolina working intimately with the football program when we hired Mac Brown 1.0, okay, the first time. And it was real clear what the expectations were. We had a real turn, he had to turn the whole program around. But it was in an era where not many people know this. He went 1-10 his first year. His second year, he went 1-10. Okay. And he gets a third year, right? He beats the national champions, goes 6-4-1, and leaves us for Texas after going 11-1 and being fourth in the country. So, Jeremy, to your point, how and Hector's, there was clarity on what the expectations were. This was a growth thing. It's got to take time, right? But like to your point, Jeremy, that doesn't happen in today's world. You don't get to go 1-10, 1-10. You don't 2-20 and you're gone, right? And so the ability we had in that culture to think growth and long term, really different from today's world in college athletics, and certainly professional sports has always been like that, to some degree.
And not only, the language, but the definition of that language and being really super clear, right? When I became the athletic director at Drake University, it was a place where, under-resourced, but they did a lot with a little. And I came in and took that job because I saw so much brilliance, so much excellence, so much beauty. And I got there and I was hit with this, mentality of just lesser than, always lesser than, lesser than. And so as I was pressing in on excellence and beauty and brilliance, and I really got you've lost your mind. What are you doing here? You just came from Arizona State and you're just trying to get the next job. And I'll never forget one of my direct reports. We had conversations about 3 years in, and it dawned on me, he realized I was actually not trying to get the next. And I said to him, you just realized I'm not leaving. I'm not doing this to get the next job. Like, this is real. But it took a long time. It took me meeting Kyle, John, through a whole lot of things to get to a place of you have to clarify what you're talking about and this balance, okay? Because I'm talking about, excellence. Look where they are. Men's basketball seated 11th in March Madness right now, right? They're crushing it. They've had great years. I'm so proud of where they are, and I've been gone for almost 8 years. So, but the balance, okay, so I'm using the word balance not as in 50-50, but striking a leadership balance of the fact that we are under-resourced. We do have processes we need to, you can't stay on this, everything's great and sunny and shiny and look at the paint on the walls, like when it's like, I don't have enough food to eat right now. So it's creating clarity and openness of the conversation that no, I'm not talking about this because I ignore or I don't see this. And I did have to have my feet brought back down to the ground to say, I actually had a softball player take me into the locker room to show me the shower. And the soap thing was hanging off the wall and the water was drizzling out. And I was like, oh my God. So as a leader, you do have to, the importance of finding language that then you can articulate, what does this mean? How do we get there? But I would love your reflection, John, on, how do we as leaders, like I stumbled through so much messiness where it could, and it is messy. I guess we'll just say that from the beginning. Kyle always reminds me, and I say this anytime I work with anybody, it's messy. Culture is messy. And if you got to swim in the messiness, like the lotus blooms in the muddy water, right? So you've got to kind of swim in that. But it is messy. And just, as a leader, how do we get there, right? How do you do all of it when it's not balanced? It is about making sure all tracks are running.
Yeah, I mean, a huge challenge, right, Sandy? I think one thing I think of, and I know that world, 28 years, and I think it's similar. One thing I'll say, and what the advice I give young people is, it's a job, yeah, but check out who your boss is. That's the key, and that's where the culture rises and falls. So when you're athletic director, yeah, it's a culture, it's a lot of tough challenges, but who's your boss? Are they on the same page, right? And do they are the same values guiding us, right? And that we can put, how much can we put into growth and development, right? So in the Mac Brown 1.0 era, like the AD, the Chancellor, Mac, they were aligned. When you're not aligned, I don't have any advice for you.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah, definitely having that alignment is critical. And then doing the tough part from the leader's perspective is to lay the expectation and hold people accountable to it and being honest with them on that aspect. And again, I have the greatest leaders that I work with, they had the intestinal fortitude to stand in front of the room and say, we worked very hard to develop this culture standards, and they said this is what we're going to be doing. And I want you to wrestle with them and come with us and be part of this. And we're willing to pour into you to develop and grow if you want to support it. But if not, outside that door, there's 1,000 other people that will love the opportunity to be able to get that done. So it's up to you. You can decide to support our culture, or you can decide to pursue your professional career somewhere else, because we're going to find somebody. And again, after you do the wrestling with everything, then the individual can make the decision. Yeah, I believe in what we're doing. I believe in our mission. I believe on the standards that have been set. The standards are clear to me. Here's the left and right limits. This is what I'm responsible for. Now I have to decide, am I up to the task to do this, or can I say thank you for the opportunity, go find somebody else? And that's a hard thing for humans to do. And depending on where you fall on the personality spectrum, is even harder. So because again, it's not an easy conversation, but you need that intestinal fortitude to be able to push your culture forward. It's not easy, and you can't do it alone either. There has to be other people that will have your back, because we will get tired of holding culture together. You will get tired of holding culture together. You got to be able to pass the baton. You got to be able to say, I'm exhausted. I need you to pick it up this week for me, because if not, it will fall apart. And because at every corner, every time that we don't do something that is culture oriented, we just created a new standard.
Yes.
And Hector, that word again, accountability, if you don't mind, Kyle, go a little bit further on that right now is, if you ask a group of people, like, what do we need more of in our culture? Accountability.
Yeah.
And then you ask the question, what does that mean? What does that look like to you? And then they point and say, well, you need to hold people more accountable. Well, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. It's about first accountability, right? Accountability to self, accountability then to the culture, and that's where the culture is so critical and important, and clarity, right? So that we know, so the culture helps us stay accountable together. And then yes, there are times when then the boss or the leader of the organization or whoever has to sit down with an individual or a group of people and say, this is the culture, you're in it or you're out of it. However, there's so much in there in terms of accountability, and that's the first thing people say. Well, these people need to be more accountable.
Let's
Yeah.
actually
Lynn,
let's sit in this for a little bit, Sandy, because
Yeah.
it's been awesome as we're going through this, because we're unpacking a bunch of other tensions as we go through this, short-term, long-term. John, you mentioned leading up versus leading down. A lot of times we think about leading down, leading across and down, and the reality is I better lead up well. A lesson that I've learned over time. But to go one step further, especially because, John, you introduced this idea of accountability to the short term and results. But Sandy, as you pulled on this a little bit further, Hector pulled on this a little bit further, of individual accountability. Again, a buzzword. I have not spent any time with an organization who didn't say we need to improve at accountability, and then we start pulling on some strings, and it's amazing where the conversation goes. I think this also reinforces the point, both John, Hector, you hit on the clarity piece, Sandy, the language piece, Jeremy, the definition of success. I'm yet to meet an organization who said, no, we've got crystal clarity all around, we're good. Like every organization, that's a fight to constantly keep refining that and gaining more clarity, moving beyond these buzzwords. So as we talk about this accountability piece, it can be individual, collective, it can be accountability to the short term versus the long term, John, as you're talking about. But as we start to pull on this string, where do some of you go?
I'll tell you, I go to Lencioni's model on the 5 dysfunctions, because Sandy, you're right. Everybody jumps right to accountability. And man, if you can have accountability, absolutely. And Lencioni has the model, which I'll briefly explain, but and he does make the point, it doesn't necessarily have to build, like you can't be at the next level, but it does talk about, Kyle, like this blend, right? So it begins, the foundation is trust. Trust in one another, because if you trust and really, truly believe in one another and have each other's back, you're going to be able to have productive conflict. It's not an absence of conflict. It's diving in, which he defines as the passionate pursuit of the truth. And that's what you want. And I have to tell my personality types all the time, it's not personal, right? We're just pursuing the truth. Once we have this passionate pursuit, it's decide and commit, right? So the next step is commitment, like we're fully in. Now, if we're all fully in, then the next step is accountability. And to your point, and to Hector's point, like accountability at its finest is peer-to-peer.
Yes.
The boss rarely gets involved, because we've hashed this out, we've argued, we've fought, we came to this passionate pursuit, we've had the truth, we've decided and committed. Now let's hold to our word. And that's what he argues results come from.
I want to jump in real quick and then keep the conversation going. Again, as we continue to challenge ourselves to really get into because it is messy. John, as you talked about, well, ultimately peer-to-peer accountability is the most powerful. But again, that doesn't just happen. There's a process how we get to it, right? I think a lot of times we're like, well, we want player-led teams. We want peer-to-peer accountability. It's like, how do you get there matters. Hector said something earlier about if there's no you can't have expectations without clarity. I'd argue that there's expectations all over the place, but we can't have accurate ones if there's not clarity. So just as we keep pulling on this thread, we can keep going deeper. Who else jump in on this conversation?
Just to expand on that aspect, and I think that's what the leadership, and the express expectations of the leader and the clarity from that leader empowers the teammates to be able to do that accountability. But the one thing that we definitely have to clarify, and I think what gets most organizations in trouble, is this concept of task orientation. So is social cohesion task versus a task cohesion. Your role within the business environment, within the work environment, is to get the task done together collectively. And we don't have to be friends and hold hands and skip down the hallway to be able to get that done. So the social cohesion is a separate aspect. But when we bring that we have to all be friends and we all have to get along, then that brings all the personalities into the mix. So I think it's important for that clarity to be up front. Hey, I got it. I understand how you feel, but this is what we agreed that we needed to get done, and we got to hold each other accountable, because it's not all about just, well, he's not going to like me if I hold him accountable. But if you are committed to the task, then it becomes something different. So separating those two elements, and as part of the culture as well.
Hector,
So that's where my mind went.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And when we were at Drake and working to clarify our values, one of them was family. And later learned family really is not, and as I coach organizations now, particularly in intercollegiate athletics, that word always comes up. And so I always caution them about it because of exactly what you just said, Hector. And that is that we're all aim for results, right? You don't get out on the playing field and hold hands and skip around and pass the ball. You get out there to compete, be a tough competitor. You compete against your own teammates for playing time, and we're all competing for the outcome of the win, right? So that word family, we want to have an organization that feels like a family. We feel like we belong. We feel like we're included. We feel like we have a voice. We feel like we have a place. We feel like we're cared for, but it is not a family. Let's be super clear. You don't eliminate a family member. I don't tell my sister, you're out the door. You're not my sister anymore. You're gone because you've not performed. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? So language matters. And Hector, you just identified that language so beautifully, that tension of kind of the social compact and the work compact, because a great work compact and outcome is not going to continue to happen on a long-term basis if there's not a social compact that we work well together, we want the best for, expect the best from one another. And when you are not doing that, expecting the best for, bringing your best self and expecting the best of others, then you are no longer going to be part of our family, our organization. And so, yeah, that tension is a huge one, and one to really be conscientious of the importance of both and the process for both. And as John said earlier, sometimes you have to lean in here more than you lean in there to get stuff done. Oh, I love that polling question that just came up.
Well, and to go one step further on that, as Sandy's talking about the team or the family dynamic, we've got some people that are coming into our organizations that have had a horrible family experience. They want nothing to do with that. I've been around some families that you think are great families, and they are huge conflict avoiders. And so we've been suppressing things forever. We've played nice in the sandbox. But I think this gets back to John's point early about short-term, long-term results as well, right? Like, I can get some short-term results that may not play out long-term because I've overcorrected to the task cohesion. Likewise, to Hector's point, I cannot get any short-term results because I've overplayed to the more the relationship side, the social side.
Yeah, if you look at some of these great coaches, like I got to work with Coach Dean Smith, for a long time. And if you ever went to his senior banquet, the banquet for the seniors at the end of the year, they were all in tears about what Coach Smith meant to them as a person and how much he cared about them. If you ever went to one of those practices, you would have thought, who is this guy they were talking about last year, right? Did he do a 180? He's dog cussing them. He's having them run. He's enforcing standards time after time after time, unrelenting enforcement of standards, right? So there's the tension, right?
Yeah.
I love Doug Conan, who's got a great book out called The Blueprint that you could follow and develop your leadership model. Tough-minded on standards, tender-hearted towards people. I would probably change it tender-hearted because but whatever, it's that standards and people, it's attention and it's both. But again, if you get back to what I said when I opened up purpose, our purpose, like where we live in college or professional athletics, in some way has to do with primarily championships, right? It's about the task. It's about results. I would argue that a caring culture where there is open, passionate pursuit of the truth and clarity is going to get you to those results. Culture eats strategy every day, right? James Collins or whoever said that.
Hey, John, and I think from that coach that you mentioned, I bet you that if we go back deep into understanding the athlete's relationship, because I take pride on my connection with my athletes and the long-term life connections with them. But from the get-go, they knew that I said, listen, I allow you to be part of my team, and I want you to feel like you're coming to a place where you're going to improve. But I love you so much that I'm not going to allow you to fail. When I see that you are derailing, I am going to bring you in, and I am going to let you know. I want to make sure that you know that puts the possibility for a correction or for hard work is going to be present. And they're going to appreciate it if it comes from the place of the heart, with clarity up front, and then they're emotionally connected. And sometimes the mission, to your point, the mission that brings you in is much bigger than just winning championships. I'm here in the Pirates because I wanted to change the world through baseball. That's the reason I came here. I heard it once and I said, that's what I need to be. And then God allowed me to be here. But the going back to the point is that clarity from the get-go gives you the opportunity to hold people accountable with love and compassion, but still know that we have to do it right because it takes what it takes. We all know that. We can't win by hoping. We have to do certain things.
Well, and
just the way it is.
Yeah, and Hector, you can't play two catchers, right? Or two second basemen. Like you only play one, and you don't only have 9 guys on your squad, right? And so you have to make tough decisions. It's your job to make tough decisions, but it is how you regard that human as a human. There's some amazing research, a researcher that's doing some great work called unconditional regard in sport. Her name is Dr. Lauren McHenry. It's amazing work that she's doing. And it's really about these 5 areas of making sure as you coach somebody that they are regarded as a human. But if you don't challenge them, it doesn't complete that regard. They're there as athletes, right? Your employees are there to perform tasks, to be part of a team getting work done. Everybody has a role, and that it's about the engagement and regarding them as a human being so that they feel heard, they feel challenged, they feel supported. But as you guys have pointed out, which I just love, it's about that relentless pursuit of clarity, the relentless pursuit of the truth, so that we're all working from the same playbook, right? So I'm not playing Kyle because I like him better than I like Jeremy or whatever it is. And so it's about somebody feeling regarded as a human in the process of the cold hard truth of where we are, where we're going, and all of that. So
and that's gonna, I love that, Sandy, and that's gonna look different for each of us, right? How I show that's gonna look different than John Blanchard or whatever else. And I think a lot of times as leaders we get in trouble because I try copying someone, or I like this idea. Oh, I'm gonna put unconditional regard into my coaching vernacular, and I haven't made sense of it and what that looks like for me. John and I were having a conversation here recently, and I've had it a lot with coaches lately. we used to always say that every player asks themselves 3 questions as they think about a coach. I think every one of our employees asks these 3 questions as a leader. Can I trust you? Can you get me better? Do you care about me? And the topic came up. I asked John, because I've had this a lot with coaches recently, is which questions do you think matters more? Do you care about me versus can you get me better? And it's interesting, again, in terms of each person responds differently to that. But my rough estimation, the more task-oriented people say, the first question I want to answer is, can you get me better? The more relational-minded individual tends to answer that question more of not. At the end of the day, the bigger question for me is, do you care about me? The reality is I have to answer both of those questions. Yes. It's going to look different. And a great coach not only knows themselves and their tendencies, but also knows each of their players is going to hear that differently. None of which means that we remove the responsibility of clarity of expectations and clear feedback on when we're hitting the mark or missing the mark.
Yeah, Kyle, I love what you say. We hope I get this right. We teach baseball, we coach human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that's really critical, because not everybody's going to take it in the same way. And I think to your point about, caring and making me better, it's what's your entree. To some people, first lens is, can this guy make me better? Right? And then others is like, do they care about me? But ultimately, and shortly thereafter, the other question comes in for everybody. And that's where leaders aren't let off the hook. They've got to do both. Tough-minded, tender-hearted.
Yeah, I think when a leader or a coach recognizes that I am coaching humans, I'm not coaching the game, right? And I think a lot of times we think about, well, my job is to teach the game, is to teach whatever. And it's human beings is the business we're in. But again, it's not to get them to like me, which again, I think is that short-term, long-term, again, coming back to your original tension, John, a lot of times my desire to be liked ends up hijacking this, which is a short-term focus as opposed to a longer-term perspective. Every coach I've been around that is successful, every leader I've been around that's successful, is able to move their sights a little bit further out in the horizon. And sometimes, if we're honest, it means, can I think about tomorrow instead of just today? It's not always thinking 5 years from now, where's this person going to be? Again, I think that's utopian, back to Sandy's point of it's messy, the world we're in. Sometimes it's just, can I get my sights out of right now? Because right now I'm probably going to hijack our process, whether it's trying to fix something too fast, whether it's trying to get somebody to like me too much, whatever that may be. But it ends up hijacking the longer term process. We're in this for the long haul, and success is way more a measure of consistency as opposed to intensity, which again shows up over time.
And Kyle, if I could just pick up on that word messy again. Twice when I was the AD at Drake, I pulled a group aside and just said, is it time to just quit talking about the Bulldog way? Is it time to just stop? Because it just was so messy, getting so hard. Like, is it just even worth my energy, our energy? And those pivotal moments when we did not stop were the most critical moments for our future, without a doubt. So sometimes the mess, getting through the mess isn't always easy, but getting to the other side of the mess is just critical. And sometimes when it's at its messiness, it's at its most defining moment.
And I think a lot of times as leaders, we'll talk about, hey, it's good for players to fail because they're going to learn and experience. Again, we can oversimplify that concept too, that failure is a great teacher. No, failure is not a great teacher at all. Reflecting on it, making sense of, making adjustments, great teacher. But I think we'll forget about that for ourselves as leaders, that we're human beings as well, and how we navigate it. Jeremy, you've wanted to jump in a couple times. What do you got? You better be ready to go with this group. With this group, you better be ready to go.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I really want to touch on what Sandy was just saying. I think when things are at its worst, I think that's where accountability is most important, right? So if, just like in her example, things were the worst, somehow they persevered through the worst. And do you think that coaches who weren't accountable were able to be consistent and make it through those incredibly rough patches? And I think the answer to that is no. And no matter how you look at accountability, yes, accountability is learned in the home, learned when you're young, and within organizations that you belong to, and yes, you learn those things, but there's also the element of change. I, as an individual, throughout the decades, have grown, and I've learned, and I have adjusted. But my accountability in my core is still the same. Am I doing right for the organization? Am I doing right for the athletes and the support staff that I'm leading? Am I doing right for the overall goal and mission? Am I doing right when no one's looking? And am I doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do? And that's where the accountability comes in. And I think accountability, and again, these are all these buzzwords like, oh, this one's more important than the other, but literally self accountability is where it starts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw out another thought here on this line rather than throw out another conflict, because we keep pulling it on this in different directions. So I think I want to hit the short-term, long-term thing again, and I'm going to throw out a thought and love to hear people weigh in, and maybe even specifically, like Sandy, as you touched on that, those specific times where it got hard and you doubled down consistently, because everybody on here has navigated hard at some point and has chosen to stay consistent with it. I think a lot of times, if you think about winning, you can think about winning in kind of 3 time frames. So there's winning ultimately, so the championship, it's a longer term pursuit. You think about winning the game, the outcome of this specific competition, and then we can think about winning moments, right? And that idea of this moment in front of me, second to second, the task in front of me. My experience, the best leaders, they're obsessed with that long-term win, but they live in the dominating the moments.
Yeah.
And it shows up in the moment to moment. And that's where that accountability piece, here's the standard, and I'm going to keep teaching all the time. I'm never going to move off of that. I think average leaders and coaches live in the world of today, trying to win the event. And the reality is that's a byproduct of all the work we've done moment to moment to moment, which gets back to Sandy's point of it is messy and it's hard and it's exhausting. Hector said, you're going to get tired. You're going to get exhausted. How am I sustaining that energy? How am I locking arms with people to do it? But just as I talk about that moment to moment versus long-term versus the competition and or just the navigating the hard, and when you've wanted to maybe give up or let up or whatever else, spark any thoughts or specific stories for you guys?
Yeah, I can share from the experience of the national championship with the West Point judo team, because I see the vision. The vision was given to a team of freshmen that were coming in 2008, and they were told, you're going to be the first class ever in the history of the United States Military Academy to be able to call themselves national champion. They were emotionally connected. They were locked in with that long-term vision. And then it was our job as leaders to sell everything we did in practice, in preparation to that, to make it connect and to make it important, to give our best effort as the winning mark for that one thing that we were doing, because it was connected with something we wanted to do 3 years from now. But they were emotionally connected. They're trying to figure out a way to say, how does this going up the stairs helping me accomplish the goal that we want to accomplish, to be the first one in the history or half a century to be called national champion from this academy? And that's the connection. We're not going to run out of gas in the match. We're going to do it now. So when we're fighting 10 months from now, we're not going to run out of gas. And that allowed them to dominate and win the moment. So that idea of them, every step that I'm taking up these steps, as much as it hurts psychologically, physically, it's connected to what I'm in the direction that I'm going, but it's the leadership's responsibility to be able to build those nets of connection in the mind of the athletes with actual messaging at the beginning of the win this moment because it's connected this way. It matters because it's connected this way. And I will say that something that was supposed to take 3 years, 4 years ended up happening in a year and a half. So in a year and a half, because they were so committed to be able to do that, and they were invested, there was an accelerated process that gave them many more. And now we have to re-engage because now the motivation has to be different. So every year we have to now change the long-term goal and say, this is how we're going to manage it now. So the idea here with this particular example is to recognize, yes, you can say this is my long-term goal, but if it becomes a forgotten thing that we put on the wall and we never revisit it on our weekly messaging, then we're not going to be able to connect it, and then we're not going to be able to win the moment, if that makes sense.
No, I love that, Hector. I think that is a good point. A lot of times I'll spend time with coaches and they'll be like, well, I'm all about the process. I say, great. What's your process? No, I don't. So do we have the clarity of it? And is it connected to what the outcome is you want? That connection piece is awesome. I also, just to touch on, as Hector was sharing that story, to recognize, come back to Jeremy's point earlier about success changes. So that person's a different person. So motivation is going to look different. I have to then adjust. I can't just keep run the exact same play. Awesome. Others.
Yeah. Let me throw out a James Clear quote real quick. You can lose yourself on one small compromise at a time. You can transform yourself on one small win at a time. And, you know, Hector sounds like that process was the one small win. Sandy, this is like a real Debbie Downer, like hit you in the face with the reality of college athletics. So we made a huge compromise on the admission of a woman athlete. Huge compromise, not the normal huge compromise, huge compromise. She lasts one semester as a fall sport, win a national championship, and I'm told it was worth it. And I'm like, we're not who we say we are. I need to really.
Sounds like self-accountability.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it was unbelievable. Happened twice, actually, different sports.
Well, and I love, just as you're talking there, John, too, again, coming back to the consistency piece. Can I trust you is ultimately a measure of consistency. Don't say one thing and do another, right?
Yeah.
Like if that's what your play is going to be, let's be honest about it and go have everything, back to Hector's point, everything should be connected around that. But I think a lot of times as leaders, we'll say one thing and end up sacrificing some other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the messy part, right, of orgs, right?
and
That's what's not seen.
that tension, you know, I was always criticized. I didn't care enough about winning because I cared so much about the holistic approach, the educational approach, because I've always been a believer in college athletics, you know, and it shows in NFL statistics, the NFL players that complete their degree play longer, make more money.
Yeah.
Why? Because they were diligent to do that.
Yeah.
We had a situation one time where highest risk, same kind of situation. And I was asked, in charge at that time of all the academic services, to just get an entire support system for this player, everything, including somebody to walk to and from class. Just, we got to have this guy perform in the classroom. And he was a delightful human, wanting to do everything he could to succeed, but had never been taught that this was an important part of his life. And
Right.
so halfway through his freshman semester was failing every single class. And we had this big meeting, all his people, coaches, everybody in this room, they beat him. You got to do better, da, 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 da. I just watched, everybody left the room. I asked, could we spend a minute together? And I asked him, how are you doing right now? And he said, oh, thank God we had that meeting. You guys are going to fix it. And so I got rid of all of the resources and got him an individual writing coach and mentor. He ends up making it through that semester. Long story short, goes out in his third year, very successful, end up with a 2.5 GPA. When he went on his third year, NFL Rookie of the Year, came back and finished his degree.
Yeah.
That's what you can, it is everything to get, but people think, well, if you care too much about athletics, it's, you know, no, it's, I mean, care too much about academics or human development. You care too much about developing the human. No, it's about getting wins now, not the long-term run, Kyle, but the short term. We got to get him to the game so he can perform and all that kind of stuff, or she can perform, crash and burn, right? It's really, that tension is one to really manage it. I'll never forget. And Kyle, when you were sharing that, what came up for me, I was brand new AD at Drake University, had men's and women's basketball were having like horrible seasons, and it was December. And I was quoted in the newspaper as saying, I don't care about winning. That's the only part of the quote that was written in the newspaper. So it said brand new AD, kind of female AD, doesn't care about winning. My whole quote was, I don't, what I care, these two coaches are getting it done. And what I care about is how they're getting it done. I don't care about the winning or something. I don't remember. But anyway, fast forward, that year, our women's team was ranked ninth going into the tournament, won 4 games in 4 days, went to the NCAA tournament for it. The men's team the next year made a historic run and went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 35 years or something like that. So it is about the process. It is that's not the AD doing anything, but pouring into the coaches, reminding them, you're crushing it. Keep doing you, keep doing what you're doing, keep crushing it, because I'll take the bullet, obviously, in the newspaper. But nonetheless, it's a crazy world, and it is about staying committed to what matters.
I love that story, Sandy. And I'm going to ask people to just kind of give closing thought here off of that. But that idea of, I mean, this is why it's hard, right? Because the results we're getting are off of past process. And so when I'm not seeing it immediately, then I start to change course. And the reality is everything I'm getting today is a product of what I've invested in before. So how can I stay committed to that, trust that that's coming? Everybody, last closing thought, 45 seconds. John, you want to kick us off?
Sure.
Since you kicked us off and we didn't get off this one tension.
That's right. Yeah. I think even though the word culture didn't come up much, I think this is all about culture, and leaders set culture. And like, is it going to be a culture of a national championship team like Hector described, or one like I described? Yes, that's up to you, right? And if you get a leader like Sandy, you're going to have where you want to go, and critical, right? So if you're a leader, be that leader. If you're an individual contributor, check out the leader and make sure you get under someone who cares about doing things the right way.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Hector?
I would say to remember that culture is what we incentivize. What we decide to incentivize just became our culture. So be clear on the guidelines that you have and what are the foundational pillars for that culture. Educate people, give them the resources they need to be able to support on that, keeping the people on the path, keeping the members of your culture on that path, and be able to work it and allow them to grow.
Awesome. Thanks. Sandy?
Yeah, I'll just say culture matters, leadership matters, and you're either coaching your culture or you're letting it happen. So you get to choose.
That's awesome. I'll finish and then kick it to Jeremy. Just as we're talking through this, that short-term, long-term thing, there's a guy that used to work with Pittsburgh that Hector and John both know, Bernie Holiday. He used to always challenge us that our job's to develop resourcefulness in our players as opposed to give them resources. And I think a lot of times we're in a rush to give resources because we want to win right now. And as Sandy gave the example, John gave the example, Hector gave the example, all examples of, we're going to invest in developing resourcefulness and actually developing the players so that they can reach their long-term performance.
There's so many buzzwords that we could have used, and some were used, but the holistic athlete and the holistic team is most important. You can't put athletes on the field that are injured, sick, ineligible because of academics or other reasons. So you have to make sure they're on the field, so you can win that game or win whatever that goal is, whether it's a championship or something else. And so whether it's athletes or coaches or athletic directors or GMs or anyone and everyone else involved in a sporting organization, everyone has to be performing at the best possible levels they can. And that can only happen with clarity. That can only happen with a positive culture. And that can only happen with self-accountability to start with, and then accountability as an organization. I would like to thank each of you for being here today and for speaking about this important topic, even though we only got a sixth of the way through what we planned on talking about today, because we had so many great things to talk about. I would like to also thank each of those in attendance today, because you coming here today means you want to be a better coach, you want to be a better athletic director, you want to be a better GM, or you even want to be a better athlete. It means you have set the standard for yourself and you're holding yourself accountable, and you being here today is great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Culture Roundtable. And if you would like to learn more about the Culture Roundtable or anything about culture and sports or our programs, please go to cultureandsports.com.